Hello.
Hi.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. Oh,
Hey,
yeah.
Steve Livingston.
Dave Livingston reporting for duty. All right. We got some non-committee member faces tonight. What is this?
Connor, I'm Robin.
Yeah. Robin, did you walk the trails around the fish and stuff? Okay.
That was we.
That was we. It's like you had a hat on, so.
Yeah, I know. Probably should still have one on.
And Tom, you are the new Girl Scouts contact for Parks and Trails Committee, right?
Yes, I am.
Well, thanks. I'm glad you joined us.
No, well, I'm excited to hear what it's about.
Great. So we're still waiting for Sarah and Carol.
Jean, Sarah's here. She's across the table from me.
Okay.
She can hear us just fine.
Okay. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll wait just one more minute and then go ahead and get started. I do want to let you know that Shelley has resigned from the committee. She called me last week, so she will not be on the call. So we will notify the city and put out the advertisement for a new appointee for the committee. And down at the bottom, we should figure out the selection committee like we've done in the past. So sorry to see you go, but she is going to still do the Adopt-A-Trail. So. Well, let's go ahead and get started. As far as I know, Carol is still going to be joining the call. It sounds like the other non-committee folks on, besides Matthew, who is going to introduce himself and has the first agenda item after the minutes. We have Robin, who is with the Bike Club, right, Robin? Yeah. And Tom, are you in Billings or in Wyoming?
I'm actually in Butte.
Oh, in Butte. Oh, even better.
But I'm out of the Billings office. I just work mostly remotely. I live in Butte.
Okay, I had sent Stephanie Harrington with the Girl Scouts as I do every month, the notice about our meeting. She's no longer with the Girl Scouts, so I asked them who should get these emails, and Tom replied, and so he is on there and he has the agenda. And Erica is on from PCEC, so good crew tonight. So we will go ahead and get started. We're doing this January 27th meeting via Zoom video conferencing. The members of the committee that are present are Connor, Allison, Darrell, Sarah, and Jean. And the only one missing is Carol, right? And then Shelley has resigned. So the first order of business is we have 3 sets of minutes to approve. One is our regular meeting sort of from October 28th, and then 2 special meetings, November 16th and December 14th. Are there any changes or additions to those minutes? If not, I'll take a motion to approve those.
I move to approve the minutes.
Rachel moved to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Who is that, Robin?
Hello.
Someone on the committee?
I'll second.
Connor, okay. All those approved? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Those are approved. I'll send those finalized to Faith. So we're going to start with Matthew. Matthew is with the planning department, city, and he said he would like to introduce himself to the committee. I asked him, since he was going to be here, to explain to the committee what the trails and active transportation process is from here on out. And then we have to make some decisions about both the funding for that plan, as well as any other funding we might want to request of the city, which we can get into after Matthew does his bit. So Matthew, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Hey everyone, for those of you that don't know who I am Matthew Menard. I am the Deputy Director of Planning for the city. Hopefully I will be seeing you more in the future if we get going on this Trails and Active Transportation Plan. And just to give you the rundown on that, we sent a request for proposals out about a month and a half ago now. We received 5 proposals and we have scored those proposals. The scoring committee was myself, Martha O'Rourke, who's the Public Works Project Manager, Jean, and then Lawson Mormon, who is a county planner. At this point, after all of that scoring, the city manager is recommending that we basically submit a contract to Vitruvian, who has partnered with Future West to be the consultant on that plan. Part of what we need you to do tonight, or need you to make a decision on tonight, all of the bids came in essentially at $50,000. One of them was, the lowest bid was $49,986, so essentially $50,000. We do need you to officially dedicate that $50,000 of CARES Act money towards the plan so we can finalize that contract with Vitruvian. And just quickly on future process, and then I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. The next step, if you were to approve that funding, would be to submit a resolution to the City Commission, who would basically authorize the city manager to sign a contract with Vitruvian. Once that happened, we would begin the planning process. The first step would be to put together a steering committee, which would likely be me, Martha, again, from Public Works, a member of this board, a member of the Active Transportation Commission, a member of the Planning Board, and potentially a couple of other members, but that will need to be discussed between ourselves and the consultant as well. I'm not sure how big of a steering committee they're gonna particularly want. Once that happens, we will have more details on the planning process. There was a scope of work and proposal that laid out some broad details, basically being the first stage, being data collection, doing walk or bike audits as possible. I know things are a little bit up in the air with COVID and doing in-person type events. After data collection, we move into the actual planning process with public input, which will come both from the data collection side of things and during the public process. In that time, Vitruvian would create the plan and it would be vetted by the public and obviously the steering committee. And then once that plan is finalized, they would have to go to county commission to be approved. It would probably come to you first to make a recommendation to the county commission as well. That's a very general overview of the plan and basically how most planning processes work, since we don't have any solid details at this point without having detailed discussions with the consultant. The time frame is hopefully finishing that process end of August. Looking for commission sometime in September would be ideal. That's really all I have for sort of things I plan to talk about. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions from the committee?
I do. So it goes to the county commission, Matthew?
It'll go to the city commission. Did I say county?
You did a couple of times and I was weirded out. So
no, sorry, that's an old habit from working for the county. It goes to the city commission.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had.
Sarah, did you have something?
Yeah, I think since you had oversight of some of the consulting contracts, can you just reflect a little bit on why Vitruvian was selected over the other ones, if they all came in at the same price?
So it was based on the scores of the scoring committee. We will put together, well, the city manager is putting together a more detailed packet for City Commission, if you do approve the funding, we're hoping to put it on the City Commission meeting for next week. But there were two proposals, Vitruvian being one of them, that came out well ahead of the other three proposals. And in the end, Vitruvian was the one that the scoring committee, it had the most first place votes from the scoring committee, basically.
And why?
What was the scoring card? Can you just reflect on what that scoring card was?
Yeah, hold on. I can pull up the criteria for you quickly here.
And Connor, was that your question as well?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. I mean, I'd just like to hear, and Jean, however, whatever your input you have, since you were on the scoring committee, love to hear that too.
Well, I think if he can pull up the scoring sheet, that will tell you a lot about the ranking within the point system of how it went.
So I can tell you the criteria, sort of the broad category number one is the quality of the RFP, the understanding and approach. Is the proposal well prepared, clear, easy to understand, and well organized? Does the public input process utilize diverse and current methods, reach the maximum number of people and people of all demographics? Any mention of specific underserved groups? Do the data collection methods and types meet the needs of the plan in the city? Does the proposal address all the items in the RFP? Did the RFP demonstrate good understanding of the City of Livingston's needs with regard to the desired plan? The second set of criteria is the related experience. So experience with similar projects and all of the items listed under the scope of work in the RFP, and then experience with similar projects in the region. The next set of criteria is the professional personnel. That's qualifications of the lead staff, project team, and principals. And then is the proposed timeline consistent with the RFP? And the final one was reference checks, which the three criteria were, did they provide the references we asked for? And did they get positive comments from those references? And then the quality of their projects included as references in that RFP.
And as part of this, I think we all called references for every single one of the companies that submitted proposals. And that was really helpful too. Other questions about the process? And Matthew, so this will, assuming we approve the 50,000 tonight, this will go to the City Commission with the city manager's recommendation for selection of the applicant too, who provided the proposal.
Correct, and it will also include a public services agreement in that packet that goes to the commission. So the contract will basically be public information at that point.
And the proposal itself.
I would assume, but I can't tell you exactly what the city manager would put in his packet to the commission.
Other questions?
Where are Vitruvian based?
They're out of Boise.
They have a partnership as part of this proposal with Future West.
Yeah, so their team was themselves, Future West, and Kathy Sezikis, who is a public health professional out of Bozeman as well.
Do you happen to know any other projects that Vitruvian has worked on recently in our area?
So they provided a lot of reference projects. Many of them were from towns in Idaho, as that's where it's based out of. Future West has worked significantly throughout the region. I think most recently in Gardner would be a local project.
All right, thanks.
Other questions? If not, we can move to the discussion about the $50,000.
Yeah, I don't know, this might be getting into the weeds a little bit. But once we get into the commission meeting, we're kind of limited to a 4-minute comment and it makes it hard to have a discussion. So is there any indication of how our plan is going to interface with the county process going on at the moment with active transportation and that relationship? So not just a public participation process, but yeah, I see you're nodding your head, so I'll let you go.
Yeah, part of the RFP was to examine trails and trail connectivity in the area of the county around Livingston. The county does seem to be, their process is not started yet, and I don't know if they have funding. So they seem to be a bit behind us, but certainly we would involve county planning in discussions, if not involve them on the steering committee. That's a decision that will need to be made, but county planning will be involved, certainly.
And Sarah, one of the things I looked at when I was considering these 5 proposals was whether they really talked about the need or recognized the challenge of pathways and trails out into the county. So they really recognized that they had to address that as part of their plan. So one or two didn't, so this one did. Any other questions? So the issue with the 50,000, as you heard, is all the bids came in at 50,000. We're being asked whether we want to allocate the entire 50,000 that was allocated to Parks and Trails by the City Commission several months ago through the CARES Act reimbursement funds that freed up other general fund money for this plan. When I asked Matthew, what happens if we, for example, say we want to pull out 5 or 10,000 for other projects we've been talking about, like the branding and signs and stuff, he was pretty clear in saying that if the entire 50,000 doesn't go towards this, since that's the cost of the plan would not go forward. There's no other city funds available at this time for that plan. And Mike Cardos reinforced that both in an email and in the conversation Darrell and I had with him and Shannon on Monday. The city strategic plan does have an active transportation plan envisioned in it for fiscal year 2023. They would need to come up with money for that. So that going forward would still be dependent on funding for an active transportation plan. So I asked about that simply because I want to know if we said no here, what happens to an active transportation plan? I think this is our strongest bet for getting a trails and active transportation plan. Sarah?
If in the city strategic plan was the active transportation plan, can some of those funds then be used for some of our parks and trails project priorities, since there was already a plan kind of carved out for next year?
Yeah, I asked that. There is no actual carve out. It's just a goal in the strategic plan. Any funding for that would go before the City Commission.
Okay. Yeah, I think it, the process has been a little bit confusing for us, you know, so I'm wondering how we avoid something like this in the future, and maybe sitting down and actually having a process around how project priorities come to the table, or how, if there was CARES funding available, that that we didn't, you know, I know you explained this, but that we didn't know that we had to approve the $50,000 for the plan. And I mean, there could have been a circumstance that maybe we could have raised more funds than $50,000 within our networks, or that we could have met the grant funding cycle for other project priorities that we had, but because we didn't understand the circumstance, now the grant cycles have closed, and so we're sitting in this position where we kind of have to move forward with it. But maybe next year, something that we can do is to set an engagement process, how we talk about projects, how we prioritize them, how they get funded, who are going to be next in line for the grant funding opportunities, because, you know, LHC is kind of in line to the paving, and we're totally in support by that. But is it just a first come, first served basis on which projects the city kind of moves on? And especially with so many plans and implementation projects that are at the the immediate future, you know, how we talk about those needs to be a little bit more formalized and less confusion, you know, because I'm happy to, I don't want to kill this project. I don't want to kill this plan, but we're not left with very many options and rooms to wiggle to even create a better circumstance, you know, than what we have right now. But I'm not complaining, but maybe moving forward that this has been a learning example.
And can I speak on that, Jane?
Sure, Daryl.
I totally understand what you're talking about, Sarah. It's very frustrating. But to be honest, I think as a Parks and Trails member for 7 years, and then as a commissioner for 7, we've just never had money to make a decision with in Parks and Trails, because there is no funding for Parks and Trails throughout budgets anywhere, you know, in our community. And this was like a fought after gift that I think is a one-time thing. And time-wise, it's just what it is. But I also get the frustration. And I know as a committee, we've talked for years about priorities, and we finally got to setting priorities, getting lists. When we got O Street because of that priority list, you know, work towards that. LHC's project is not funded by the city. So that's not something that is a priority to the city. It's just we're backing it so that we can do in-kind work if we need to help. And because it's on property that is city, then it's related to that. So we really, it's not a funding issue for that. But I agree that the priority list has to be very clear. And I've always, and Jean Marie and I have talked about this, I feel like I really would love to see something substantial. Like we have a tangible item come from this funding, but it looks like we've moved, you know, the committee had moved really towards something. I value this plan, but I also wish for the tangible. So it's like, which one? How do we move forward on this? And in the big picture, long-term planning, the plan is very important. In the moment, having something tangible, one of those projects that we wished for a long time would be amazing. But, you know, we've been talking, Jean Marie and I, about this for, you know, quite a few days, it feels like, and it's a tough one. Just my thoughts.
Jean, may I add something as well?
Sure, Matthew.
So I think specifically to that point, I think part of this plan and a really important element of the plan will be the plan identifying and prioritizing and potentially giving us some costs and funding mechanisms for specific trails and active transportation improvements. And I think that's part of the reason why this is such an important plan to do, is that it allows you all and the city and the public to show and to see what the priorities should be based on what the public has said through the planning process, if that makes sense.
And the next agenda item is the whole discussion about other budget items. And the question is going to be, do you want to go to the City Commission with a request for some of the remaining CARES Act funding that's available for any of these projects? And you could do both. Do you want to make a request to the city through Shannon to add some of these projects that we're not going to be able to fund if we approve this 50,000 to the next fiscal year budget? So in other words, if there's funding for signs and branding or dog park or repairing 89 South Bike Path, do we want to ask for CARES funding? Do we want to go to the city and ask that get put in next year's budget? So I don't want us to feel like we're dropping some of those priorities just because of this fact that the whole 50,000 will have to go to a plan that we really want and need to be able to raise funds to make some of these other projects go through.
So Deanie, may I ask a question?
Sure, Carol.
Yeah, on the city has a time when they set a budget for the year. So what you're saying is the Parks and Trails do not have an item in that budget. So would it be possible for you to go to the budget planning and get a budget for the trails, or am I way off base on that?
Darrell?
Well, Jean Marie helped me on that too. We discussed that at our meeting on, you know, I think we are budgeted for Parks and Trails, right? Maintenance. Jean Marie, do you remember some of the numbers? We actually had more budgeted towards Parks and Trails this year in our budget than we have in a long time. But again, it's not those big projects. We don't have that extra general fund budget to add big projects or add, you know, tens of thousands of dollars to our plan or priorities and planning. But it is in there. And I think we can continue to chip away at adding things like the vault toilet, right? That is part of the budget. It has been discussed as a priority for us as well, or as for the city and with the committee. And I don't know if it was on the actual priority list. Jean Marie, was it on the recent one? I can't remember.
You're talking about the vault toilet at Myers
Yeah.
River?
Yeah.
Yeah. Shannon had discussed that with us last year. We knew it was going in. We actually did provide input on where that should go.
So it was in our priorities. So we were able to budget and our fund in the big budget, in the general budget, that kind of thing. So it is possible, Carol, and I know that was a long answer to a short question, but we are doing that. And I think in the time I've been on, I've watched it increase. And I just want to, I mean, you know me, I wish we could fund it for huge amounts, and I will push for it as much as I can. You know, and we pushed, as the whole commission believed in the 50,000 for the you know, budget, or from the budget, from the general fund budget, from the CARES Act for the committee to make a decision on. So yeah, we just keep pushing it, keep pushing where we can, get every dollar we can.
And Shannon did indicate in the meeting call we had Monday that Darrell was on that, and so did Mike, we should get these proposals into them now so that we can get that under consideration. And I could say Shannon, I thought, was very supportive of the whole issue of getting the signs in, for example, the branding, the signs that we would like to have done. He said, I would love to tell you right now that we'll get that done by September, but he can't because that budget hasn't been approved.
Right. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Other questions or comments about the 50,000? Does someone want to make a motion on the 50,000? Sarah?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the 50,000 for an updated trails and active transportation plan by Vitruvian and Future West.
Can we just say trails and active transportation plan? That decision about the vendor is really up to the commission.
Oh, right. I thought that was decided. Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, motion to approve the 50,000 for trails and active transportation plan. Any other discussion?
Do we have public comment?
Erica or Robin or Tom?
I was curious if we have a contact point for Vitruvian or someone we could, Matthew.
I'm the contact. You can email me planning@livingstonmontana.org. That goes to me and the planning director, Jim. So feel free to do that. And it's much easier than trying to spell my name, and I can get you on my actual email.
And remember, this will go to the City Commission Tuesday. Erica?
Thanks, Jean. No comments other than just really appreciated the thoughtful discussion and looking forward to engaging with throughout the process.
Good. Any other comments?
I mean, my only comment would be I'm not going to vote because I will vote in the future, depending on what you guys recommend. So I'm listening in to what you want.
Sure. Okay.
Okay, so we've had a motion and a second to approve the 50,000. Let's take a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. So Matthew, I guess you can take that to the City Commission.
Right, yeah, good.
So great. So then the second item is for some of those other projects. And I can tell you that the ones I specifically mentioned to Shannon, Darrell, and Mike Cardos on Monday were the ones that this committee's reinforced most recently: the branding, the signs, the identification signs for some parks and trails that have none, the adopted trail signs, and then the dog park. Allison, I really wasn't sure how much to ask for that. There are other things on that list that the city manager had proposed that fall within parks and trails. So the question is whether you want to make a request of the City Commission for CARES Act funding for these projects, because they have to make that decision pretty quickly. That CARES Act is going to be allocated before the end of the fiscal year.
So, Jean, you were saying that we need to send that information by Thursday. Is that true?
I think if we're making a request of the City Commission for Tuesday's meeting, if we want it in the packet, we should get it to Faith tomorrow.
Okay.
Does that sound right, Darrell?
Yes, but that doesn't mean you can't put in a request at a future date as well.
Right. I just feel like this CARES Act money is going to get allocated, and we have not, as a committee, made the argument for other projects besides the general 50,000 that we thank them for, but which is going towards a plan. Sarah?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely support asking for the additional branding, logo, and signage funding. We have some of those quotes. I think it's Clark with the metal signage, and have an idea. I don't know if we need more definite numbers on that. If we wanted 30 signs, for every park and trail or whatever that might be. I think that's the only thing that's kind of missing from our ask. I do think we should, I don't know, maybe Darrell can comment on that we should ask for more than we need rather than for a bare minimum. I think it's really important to highlight what we have, wayfinding, direction. People even know that they're in a park, and consistency and continuity. I know, speaking with Maggie, she says that, with the branding and logo with the city logo is actually really difficult to recreate and print and quite expensive. So I think it would be a worthwhile investment on that part. My other suggestion would be with the dog park and the 50 grand that's allocated for that is to expand that concept. And it's actually a high grounds park renovation that includes a dog park, so that it's not just limited and communicated to being dog owners who want an enclosed fence. It's quite a big space, and you talk about, multi-users and how does it appeal there. so that we also don't get pushback on maybe what that communicates. That was it. And then besides, you know, the lagoon, I would really push for that. I know it's a big capital investment of $100 grand. I don't know if we can apply for a grant with the ponds restoration, it being primarily used for angling and fishing with the Montana State grants. I don't know if that's rolling or not, but just another idea, but it might be too far-fetched with CARES funding. But we can provide ADA access. I think Jean and I talked about that a little bit. That might improve our chances for getting a grant.
Allison, do you have thoughts on the dog park?
Yeah, so I think I like Sarah's comment, and in the master plan that we already have, it highlights that, which is it would be part dog park, community garden space, potential playground area, as well as shade structures for picnicking. And so Jeannie and I just drafted a letter to Shannon to kind of ask him to, I guess, guarantee or let us know if the city is willing to help us with water up there, as well as what the budget really looks like for a project like this. Because I've been holding off talking to community partners at the moment until we figure out what the city is willing to back us with, so that I can go to them and give them an amount. But yeah, it should be pointed out that it wouldn't just be a dog park. It would be a park for the north side on high ground for that neighborhood. I was kind of, from my understanding, that $50K that was initially thought that might go to Reservoir Park renovation will no longer be going to Reservoir Park. Correct, Jeannie?
No. There's just not been a decision on it. It's still out there, but
okay.
The full amount of CARES Act reimbursement funds is down from what it was originally when the city manager created this list.
Gotcha. Okay. I misunderstood that. So,
Al, do you have something to add on that?
Yeah, just informationally, we have had a lot of pushback on a dog park for the CARES Act funding. Just, I think people they're equating that is like a frivolous want. And I mean, we all know the importance of this park. It gives a whole area of play for a big section of our community, right? And that had very little, if anything.
Right.
And, but I can tell you community-wise, even I'll be honest, people I expect really love and support parks are not supporting this. Yeah, just over and over again. So I'm just one commissioner hearing it, but we heard it quite a bit. Others, I'm sure, the same.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So one alternative
specifically,
one alternative is to do what Sarah suggested, and also maybe ask for $10,000 for a vault toilet for this neighborhood and dog park, and point out the level of public support you've been able to get, Allison, both in donations for the fencing, money donations, and so on.
Yeah, and I think that we also should reiterate, we're specifically speaking with Stephen J about creating like a graphic of what the park could look like, so that it's very clear that it's not just for dog owners, but that it is for the neighborhood, to create a space for people to hang out in. And I think that I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if people are getting hung up on the fact that they're hearing it as a dog park. And so I think if we could communicate that as well, that there is small business support and community support for renovating Northside Park to make it multi-use, would help.
And I wonder if, like, the selling point of this is what we would like or wish for, but what we also would like to consider, have the city or the commission or the community consider, is how do we fulfill this if this is not the funding source? And then keep pushing things like that through, because yeah, our budget's very planned, but there's times that things come in and out, and we just have to be ready, you know, that we have time to, or we have funds that we could access for some reason or another, or even if it's a match, you know, we've done that, or we have to dig into our reserve a little bit more than we want to help fund something. So it just always being ready and pushing for the importance of it, whether it's going to be funded from CARES Act money or from something else, but being right on that at any given moment we're ready and we have this. And I think, like you're saying, Allison, selling the support that we've had is super important to that, you know, because that's sort of the match part, you know. But
I think we also haven't made the point that our parks and trails got a tremendous amount of use in the past year because of COVID. I mean, we saw that obviously across the state, across a lot of the region, where people went outside in hugely bigger numbers than before, because that was sort of their place to go during COVID with their families, to be outside, to get the exercise. We haven't made that connection with where this money is coming from. I think it's totally appropriate that these CARES Act reimbursement funds be used for parks and trails, particularly when we have no other funding available for some of these things.
Well, and just Jean Marie, I did use that selling point when we were pushing for the 50. And so we did, that was way at the beginning of CARES Act funding. So some of you and most of you probably weren't even, you know, close to being aware of that beginning of the conversations, but we did push for that. And I agree. And I think that's why everyone was so supportive of finally funding Parks and Trails a bit, you know, but we got to keep pushing that impact. Every day you're out there, you see it. We see the impact, we see the need. I mean, even from the wall, like we talked about with the wall by the dike wall that keeps tumbling down, and that, you know, pushing for those kinds of things that we can somehow be part of, but also get funding from, as well as support with matching if we have to, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Jarrell, is the pushback you're getting primarily for, like, we don't want to use CARES Act money, or like we don't want a dog park?
I like 2 meetings ago when we were discussing CARES Act funding again, and we do it, you know, almost every meeting, unless we just have an update and then no discussion, but we are discussing it every meeting. When it was brought up and it was put on, we had added the I think it came up as dog park on the list, which is unfortunate now after hearing like the big picture of this. But when it was stated that way, that during that meeting, I bet just during public comment, we had multiple, 10 people mention it, you know, like, I think that it should go to, you know, and they reference the dog park in general. And then the other part of it is that people were really focused on more the social aspect of social service based, or so the human need of with the funding sources going to that versus humans walking and them having need, or humans having a space to hang out in. Yeah, just an update on how people have been bringing it to us. And then emails, quite a few emails on it.
Good.
So in answer to your question, Sarah, about the cost of the branding would be anywhere from $900 to $1,200 plus $250 for branding for the adopted trail signs. The signs themselves are, for adopted trail, are $60 with the name recognition. And I think I looked at doing maybe 10 of those or 20 of those, I guess, because we have 7 potential teams to approve, and it would be at 2 locations in some of those. And Clark Smith signs, like the one, I don't know if it's on Bozeman Connector Trail or Myers or whatever, but the kids walking and the letters are cut out, that's $150 with the stakes. So we could suggest 10 of those. So we're looking at less than $4,000 for all of that. The vault toilets, 10,000, which is, I was looking at what some of the phase 1 things are for the neighborhood dog park. So the question is, do you want to go to the city commission with a request for CARES Act funding? And if you do, how much and for what projects?
Tuesday.
Can I ask about another project? I don't know if this would be too much, but I'm always thinking about the north side because I think it's just not thought about enough. And one of our parks, Katie Bonell or M Street Park, is sitting there on the southwest side of Gallatin. And Gallatin's become kind of a thoroughfare. It's not safe, and you have a large population of maybe more low to moderate income housing on that side. And I've got comments from the public that it's not safe for their kids to cross the street and even use that space on their own. So I don't know if we could recommend, because if we could recommend a safe pedestrian crossing to access that park. And I know that access to public spaces doesn't seem like a social service in CARES Act funding, but if I think about the families that can afford to access those spaces, and what they have to do and why they have to drive, to a trailhead or drive to a park, it just doesn't seem like equitable access to our public spaces. And if kids are staying home and families are staying home, it might be their only opportunity to recreate and be outdoors and provide options for mental health and mobility. And so I don't know if that would be an easy or semi-affordable piece of infrastructure that we could mitigate some of the traffic speeds in there, I don't know, maybe even create a demonstration project or a flashing pedestrian yield activated sign that we've been looking for, or we've been looking at Park Street crossings, flags even, or, just anything there, maybe even just some general outreach and awareness, or to throw some extra resources at that area. Just another idea.
Mm-hmm. Matthew, what's your thoughts?
I don't think that's a bad idea. I think probably your best first step would be to discuss a crosswalk there. Obviously, there's a few complications with that, just having to put in ADA landings on both ends, which means you're going to have to re-curb everything. But that's probably going to be your most effective option at that point, and some signs. The speed limit on there is 25. And if cars are moving really fast, it may be an enforcement issue as well. I'm assuming that cars are probably going 35 to 40 on that road, just the way the road is designed.
Sarah, has this come up before the Active Transportation Coalition?
It hasn't, not this specifically. This comes from public. And just mentioning that when we did the safe Park Street crossings for active transportation, our focus was only on Park Street. And actually it was a response to that report saying, why are you forgetting the north side? What about us? Why aren't you looking over here? And so in that report, I had to be clear that the mandate and the directive was just to look at Park Street crossings.
Has the Active Transportation Coalition thought about making its own request to the City Commission?
No.
For CARES Act funding?
No, but I could.
Like this?
Yeah, I was just thinking it was attached to a park, so it might attach both agendas. No, I just
wondered if they had done anything like that.
No, not yet, but it's a good idea. And it's something I could put together pretty quickly.
Well, I think Matthew and I can just start the conversation too within the city. I would hate for us to focus any of our funds and our little funds to something like that, because there might be other funds that we can, and it might be more in-kind work and things like that. So we want to start with the cheapest version for the Parks and Trails.
You're on mute, or
you cut out, Darrell. Darrell, you're on mute. Darrell?
She can't hear you. Yeah, she must be on mute.
Darrell, you were on mute.
Well, my kid has called me 5 times. Well, I was just trying to talk to you guys. So I'm like, come on, just leave it for a second.
You just cut out when you were talking about thinking that you would like to not go in that direction for the small amount of funds we'd be asking for?
Yeah, I'd say step it back. So we try to see what the in-kind work or what the city is that a possibility? Because those are little mini projects that can be put into sometimes, and Matthew can help me with this, but sometimes into, streets and different things like that. And so we start there and kind of step back where we have to versus looking at it as a Parks and Trails funded thing. That's what I would say and see from there. Matthew, what do you think on that?
Yeah, I mean, there's multiple funding sources if we want to dedicate it to that. Something like that, transportation impact fees, or funds, I should say in this case, can probably be used to that. There may be small grants that we can look at for things like that. And putting some paint on a road for a crosswalk is relatively inexpensive. It's just going to need to run through Public Works to make sure that that's actually safe to do that there, and all the infrastructure is in place to do that. But I can certainly have that discussion with Shannon and the city manager, and we can start looking at that.
Great.
Good. Thank you.
So do we want to make a proposal for CARES Act funding? Sarah, do you want to make a motion? Or yeah. Allison? Either or both?
I mean, I'd like to make a motion to ask for CARES Act funding for improved branding and signage. Do I need to get more detailed than that?
No.
No. Okay.
I second Sarah's comment. And I mean, I want to present this Northside Reservoir Park in a way that the city will be excited about it, because I hadn't, until Darrell mentioned it, heard any negative thoughts toward it. I can understand them, but I would like to move to ask for funding for the Northside Reservoir Park upgrades.
Do you have an amount or?
I mean, I would say I want to ask for $20,000.
Okay. Sarah, are you okay if she amends your motion? Or do you want it 2 separate ones?
If it doesn't approve, do I get a chance to ask for it again? A different motion?
I think they need to be separate.
Yeah, well, let's do your motion. And Allison, are you okay seconding her motion just on the branding and signage first?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Any
Jennifer, we have to have a number too, right? Like, what is that? What's the request then?
I have $4,000.
4,000. Okay. Yeah, and we should state that in the motion that you want to state the amount and what it's for.
You could go higher,
Yeah.
Sarah.
I'm in favor of going higher. I'll say 5,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
That would give us more signs. Let's just say that, you know.
Shoot higher.
Okay. So she's asked for 5,000. Is that okay, Allison?
Yes, I second that.
Any discussion from the committee first? Any public comment? Okay, then let's take a vote. All those in favor of asking for 5,000 from CARES Act funding for the branding and signage, vote aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay, so we'll ask for that. Now, Allison, let's go to yours. Do you want to make a motion for 20,000? You said for CARES Act funding for improvements to the neighborhood / dog park.
Yes, I motion to ask for $20,000 to make changes and upgrades for the community park of Reservoir Park on North Side.
Is there a second?
I'll second, Kenny.
Carol seconds. Any discussion?
I just have two thoughts. Should we be asking for more than 20,000? Only because with some of the CARES Act funding, I've seen that the ask has been, let's say 30, and they're like, well, here's 15. Oh. And then whatever we are asking, and then I'm wondering if whatever we are asking for, that we're just very specific and that we do reframe, you know, what it is we're asking for. So if the fencing has already been paid for and sponsored, then we're asking for upgrades of Reservoir Park for trees, maintenance, a bench, you know, whatever it is. I don't think it needs to be detailed, but just maybe that shows that we're investing in the upgrades and not just the dog park.
Yeah. So, okay. So what I emailed Shannon today, sorry, let me find it real quick. Phase 1 would be landscaping, including trees, especially for a wind block, a vault toilet. Sorry, I'm just looking at it. Parking, a parking area, which was in the master plan recommended on the west side of the park, as well as water access, which would be a water fountain. And yeah, so that would be phase 1.
And the fence.
And again, it's confusing to me a little bit because yes, Spurline has offered to donate fencing, but at that point, we also were still in the beginning conversation with Shannon about that, and he doesn't necessarily know if he agrees with the fencing that's recommended. So I want to say that fencing is donated, but if the city doesn't agree with the type of fencing that's donated, I'm not sure what that would look like. Does that make sense?
But he was willing to look at it.
Yeah, he was.
Okay.
So what we could do is say we want 20,000 towards those phase 1 steps, which includes the fencing, the vault toilet, landscaping, delineating a parking area and water access, and that we have commitments of fencing, cash donations, volunteers like from the LDS church to help with both the development and the maintenance. And this is the money we would use for the match or to help be part of that.
Right.
Jarrell, you thoughts on that?
The only thing I wonder about is we might want clarification on the water, because maybe I'm mixing it up, but there might have been some in-kind work, so you don't want to request it within the project if that's actually, we could say something about water, but that not being part of the cost. But Matthew, do you remember? I feel like that was something that the city could do relatively through, or cheaply through the, within the budget already.
Are you just talking about water connections in the park?
Yes. Yeah.
I don't remember. I don't know what the sort of the water situation is there. It's just, I think, depending on what the infrastructure that already exists in the ground. If it's already there, it's probably quite cheap. If it's not, it's quite expensive, but I'm not sure.
So when we talked to Shannon, he thought that he might be able to run lines off of High Ground Road, but he was concerned about the water pressure because of how close we were to the reservoir.
Okay.
Which makes sense.
Would we have to put that into the request, the water, or was that something the city could do in kind? Do you remember, Allison?
I want to say that Shannon thought they might be able to do it in kind, but I can't. Jamie, do you remember for sure if he said that during the meeting?
He thought they could do it in kind, and that's why I thought if we made the proposal for 20,000 and said, here are the phase 1 activities, which were matching with both city in kind work, donations of fencing, donations of money, volunteer time, at least the commission could see we're trying to put this package together, do all of this.
Yeah, and if we clarify that in that request, just that all those things you listed, I think it's super important. Then it doesn't designate any of that 20,000 to the water either.
No, if we can, I mean, the vault toilet will be 10,000, I assume. That's what was budgeted for the one at Myers Riverview Trail. And that's a little harder to raise funds for, you know? Yeah. So we're talking about 10,000 for some of these other things, which includes some of the, like a water fountain or a dog water fountain or something like that. Some landscaping, we might work with the tree board to get some landscaping in there, things like that.
Jeannie, why don't we move to request for 50,000, like Sarah was saying, ask for more, and hopefully we'll get approved for.
So let's see. So now you want to go from 20 to 50,000?
Yeah, remember, well, Sarah made a recommendation for asking more because we're seeing a lot of people request money and then get less than they're requesting. And my goal is to be able to go to the community partners and say, hey, we have this amount of money allocated. Would you be willing to match part of it? Or because a lot of people have said, we'd love to financially support you. Let us know what you need. And so I need to be able to go back to them and have an idea. Because right now I don't. I feel like I'm kind of grasping at nothing.
So first, Carol, are you okay seconding a 50,000 request?
Yes.
Okay, discussion.
When we present these, are you just submitting a little synopsis of what we're asking for?
I would submit a letter to Faith tomorrow so that it can be in the commissioner's packet, whether they vote on anything Tuesday. I don't know, they didn't vote on anything 2 weeks ago. I will be on the call. So I'm happy to defend this. I don't know what the 50,000 is going towards. the problem. I mean, that was a figure that the city manager put in the list, is all.
Right,
Also-
and we have like a full community. It's not just a dog park, right? So there's on the master plan, there's like recommendations for community garden space. So it could be used to create community garden plots. There's a recommendation for a play structure on the west side with picnic benches. And those are listed under phase 2 because the original phases were thought that we would be fully fundraising the project. And so if we get funding, we could look at some of those phase 2 projects of a playground and picnic benches and a shade structure and a community garden that could go in sooner and make it multi-use earlier.
Okay.
Also, just when you send that request, send it to Michael as well. And not just Faith, just because I know Faith is out of the office potentially. So I don't want it to get missed.
Mm-hmm. I'll send it to Michael and to you, Darrell, as chair of the commission. And what I'll do then, what? Go ahead, Rachel.
Allison, I think it's a good idea to start dipping into some of those phase 2 plans as outlined in the master plan for Reservoir Park, especially in order to balance out the dog park controversy, bringing in food gardens and whatnot may appease some of the community in regards to the eligibility of that project, for CARES Act funding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Rachel. I think it would definitely help people to realize that it's for the whole neighborhood. It's not just.
And there's a comprehensive plan as outlined in the master plan that we're trying to act on.
Yeah.
Could you even add that infrastructure that was like a playground, but instead of just a playground, they have like those mindful interactive infrastructure, like a mini labyrinth, or I mean, I don't know what they are, but that you would really speak to the mental health and well-being.
Yes, I can do that. And we have our basic master plan kind of graphic that we're using when we're communicating with Shannon, and the plan is to have Stephen J update it a little bit and provide a little bit more structure, like where the wind block of trees would go and benches, and utilizing the kind of vista on that north side, so that when we reach out a little bit more to the neighborhood and community, it's clear that yes, we're going to use a third of this property for a dog park, but like the other 2/3 is also utilized for the other parts of the family and other local. Have you guys seen this graphic?
Which graphic?
The one that's in the master plan.
Show it if you've got it. Hold it up. It's done really well.
I don't know how to do that because I think that Connor would have to let me share my screen.
You should be good to share, from what I can see.
It says the host can only share during meeting.
Oh, yeah, that's funny. Let me go to advanced.
But I can also email it to everyone.
Okay, there you go. You're free.
Okay, so I'm gonna just pull up what? Oh my gosh, why do I have to learn how to do this while everyone's watching me?
This is in the public record too, so you know.
Yeah, totally. Thanks, guys. I'm going to, Connor, don't worry about it. I'm going to email it to you.
That's it. That's what Sarah's holding up.
Oh, perfect.
Is the map that's in the Parks and Trails master plan of Reservoir Park.
Okay.
So the idea would be,
So you can,
Stephen Jay, who's the GIS analyst for the county and the city, would help us update that with a little bit more of the ideas that Allison has shared with all of us.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so what we've talked about is moving the community garden more central, because Shannon doesn't want any fencing around the city water access, which I can understand, and putting the dog park on the east side. And then he's recommending, Shannon had recommended a wind block along the west side, as well as the playground having a shade structure.
So I can add all the other phase, I mean, a reference to the other phase issues, activities there, Allison, in the request.
Yeah.
So the motion is 50,000. We'd basically be saying that's in the city manager's recommendations, and we want to ask that be funded.
Correct.
Okay.
Along with the 5,000 that we already approved. Are we ready to vote? Any public comment? Okay. Are you ready to vote?
Mm-hmm.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is that everybody? Did anyone not vote? Okay. Any opposed? Okay. So Allison, I'll draft something. I don't know what your schedule is tomorrow, but I'll send it to you. Make sure it reflects what you want it to say about the neighborhood and dog park.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll get it into Darrell and Mike tomorrow.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Good. That's good.
And then we can, depending on what the city commission does, we can look at what we want to do as far as the city budget for fiscal year 2022.
Right.
Which we have a little more time with. Right, Darrell? Sounds like we could even discuss this at our next meeting. And Mike Cardos would like to also come and talk with us to talk about the funding that has gone and continues to go to Parks and Trails. So I'll see if he could do that at our next meeting, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. Anything else on funding? I actually, Connor, this is where I thought you could talk about the grant process. And
Yeah.
what you decided.
Yeah, so essentially we said we wanted to move forward with the grant application through the state program in that special meeting. Ended up emailing Shannon about kind of the process, how to, move forward on a few different fronts with that. Didn't get a response for a while, followed up again. And essentially he said, let's hold off on applications until the active transportation and trails plan is done, so that we have, probably some projects actually budgeted and laid out and prioritized in a way that we can really use as like a solid foundation for a grant application. And essentially, I mean, that at that point, if he wasn't going to be supportive of an application for this cycle, we kind of shut it down for that for this year, given that the deadline's in like a week. So kind of pivoting now to a little different project for this year to sort of coincide with the active transportation plan, where we actually kind of put together a list of grants. Sarah started the list already. Like a list of different grants that could be pools of money to pull from or to apply into for funding for projects. The deadlines, kind of what kind of projects they fund, and essentially just put that all in one place. and talk with Shannon / the city in general, you know, to kind of get a feel for, or not get a feel, really nail down the process for what a grant application would look like through these programs. Because I found that it was actually very difficult to like understand what needed to happen to apply for a grant. It was essentially under the city's name. So I think that's all kind of groundwork that needs to be done that I plan on doing now moving forward, so that when we are ready to apply for a project and or apply for funding for a project, we actually know what we're going to do. And we know that the avenue of, you know, okay, we need to do this first. This person needs to sign off on it at the city level. It needs to go here. You know, there's just a lot of unknowns. And that process was very vague. So if we can lay that out ahead of time, I think it'll set us up well for future funding opportunities when they arise.
Thanks, Connor. Questions for Connor? Or?
I have a comment, Jean.
Yep.
This is Rachel. Connor, thanks for all of that. I appreciate that update. I know that the Park County Community Foundation recently led a grant writing webinar. I think that was, you know, mostly geared towards nonprofits, but I wonder if you'd be interested in viewing it. I'm sure that they recorded it, and you could probably get either the slides or the, you know, a recording of the presentation. But they did a pretty nice job of, so I hear, of laying out the, you know, basic grant writing needs and sort of documents and prep work in order to be prepared for those things. I'm not sure how that would compare in terms of the small local government grant writing process, but maybe it would be helpful.
Yeah, definitely couldn't hurt to, if that's available, to get a copy of that, or, you know, get a link to it to check it out. Yeah, and then part of that process too is like, would there be any city resources to do that, any of that grant writing, you know, so we're not the ones doing it as volunteer committee members. I don't know. I have no idea. So, but I think the better we are, the better prepared we can be to take stuff on if needed, the better. So.
Yeah, thanks for diving in.
Yeah, thanks for all your work, Connor. I know that was a frustrating process. So.
Well, if we can turn it into a successful grant application next year for something we're really excited about, then it'll be good. So,
this sort of just begs the question in my mind, and maybe Darrell would have a comment on this, but have any city committees, or should we be considering using CARES Act money to fund a grant writing position for the city or a volunteer coordinator position?
Can you ask that again? Now I have someone cooking in my space, struggling with all these things tonight. So saying, like, asking or requesting within the CARES Act funding, a grant writer?
A grant writer or a volunteer coordinator, some kind of position that would, a capacity building position that would be able to spend time and energy on fundraising, namely.
We've had that in the past, and then we moved it to in-kind within our organization. And I think it's possible for the grant part or the grant writing part to use the city staff. I don't know if it's going to be funded or, the positions would be funded, but it's always a conversation that can be had with the city manager. I just think because the city historically went away from having that position, it was an actual designated position at one point, and then another, before that it was more through, we outsourced it, worked with another organization. That's when I first got on, and then we went to in-house. So, but I mean, people are always asking for granting help or grant writing help. And we have Lisa Lowy, who usually works with that.
Okay, good. It's like all these committees are like all these states trying to get the vaccines, you know, and it's not really very well organized. We don't have a staff person that actually is with our committee on a regular basis like some do, so we don't always have the same help. We do have to go to Lisa, I think. So it's worth thinking about, Darrell, to down the line. And speaking of grants, the next thing on the agenda is just the Alpenglow application. We were asked by Jesse Wilcox just to put this on the agenda and allow the public to comment if they wanted. We sent a letter of support for the Alpenglow Recreational Trails Program grant proposal last year. They did subsequently a bunch of work with the state to figure out why their application was turned down. They are improving it. I included the letter from last year. I would probably, if you approve it, amend it to also reference information about the survey from October of 2019, where people said they wanted more ADA accessible and or paved pathways. So just to freshen it up a little bit. So that what I'm asking you to vote on, and we'll see if there's any public comment on, is are you okay if we send another letter of support for Alpenglow's application?
I'll move to approve the letter to support Alpenglow through the letter of support. How's that?
Great. Is there a second?
Second.
I will second.
Okay. Was that Allison? So any comment from the committee? Any comment from the public? Okay. Then we'll just vote. All those in favor vote aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, I will send that letter to Jesse tomorrow with just a little quick amendment. Adopt a Trail, we have 7 groups who, there's 6 that are existing groups. There's one that isn't, which was for the Katie Bunnell Park. Greg, who was on the committee, had that group. He moved from that area. We don't have an Adopt a Trail group there, but all the other 6 groups applied. In addition, we got a new applicant from Fairfield Marriott, who is doing Bozeman Connector Trail. Has to do that. So they have all submitted the new application, which says you actually have to report your cleanups, and will, as soon as the city can do it, we'll get those recognition signs up. So those are all in your packet.
Jean, do you need a motion to approve all of those applications?
Yeah.
So I'll move to approve all of the applications for Adopt a Trail.
A second.
Now, Sarah, okay. Any questions, comments from the committee?
Has the report back from sponsors for Adopt a Trail been sufficient?
What do you mean the report? Oh, well, you know, we just got this, and winter isn't the best time for them to be out on the trails trying to clean it. So, okay. Except for O Street Connector and Robin, of course. You guys have submitted something in the last couple months, but none of the others have, and I didn't really expect them to this time of year. So thank you. Any other comments from the public? If not, we'll take a vote on that. All those in favor vote yay.
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 Opposed? Okay, well, I will send those to Maggie. So she has those and notify everybody. We're online and we're working on the signs. So.
Good.
Updates, the second communications platform, Rachel and Sarah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, just to give an update on what this is, we as a committee find that we all have our own folders on our laptops, and a lot of documents are sitting on individual computers and storage systems. And we were looking at the conservation board, as well as, you know, planning board, and then the Parks and Fairs board. Jean brought my attention to, and we were looking at ways in which we can streamline some of our working documents and collaborative relationship with working on different projects. The city has a lot of useful links on our landing page. I think we're the only committee that has those resources that kind of need to be updated. And then there's committee documents on the left-hand panel, you know, like email the committee, as well as, well, what sits in those like agendas and meeting minutes. But there aren't any working documents or project documents that we're all looking at. And so I emailed Faith and Michael with the example of the conservation board, just to see if we could bring some consistency to boards and committees, or if we could just copy the conservation board. This would also include a user self-managed email listserv, so with groups, so you know, people can sign on or sign off, and we just have a consistent email database as well for parks and trails. And I think this will become much more important as we're going down a trails process. So thinking about how we can just be more effective in the way that we work. So I'm waiting for Michael to come back to me on that, and Rachel on that. And then we come back to the committee with a suggestion of how we would organize that system and communication system. So it would be, for example, a Google Drive with 2 folders. One folder would consist of publicly available documents, which is most of the documents. And then we would have, you know, working documents in another folder that just committee is working on until they are approved, you know, through the committee, and that they were be made available to the public. So those are our general thoughts, but does anybody have any questions or comments? I know one of the things would be making sure that the platform continues beyond us. So as we have turnover, that we don't want to, you know, put a lot of investment into this thing and then it's not utilized or picked up by other committee members. And I know that I just hassle Jean a lot for information because she's the most senior on the committee. So maybe it's just a way to be able to provide information and onboarding and orientation to new committee members and where they can access that stuff. That's it.
I would just add that if the committee decides to go this route, Sarah and I can put together a tutorial for any members who might want to take advantage of that in order to use the new system, filing system. And then that video can also be recorded and can be passed on for future committee members as well. I think it will be an awesome tool in terms of ensuring continuity, efficiency, and knowledge sharing among committee members and with the broader public as well.
Jarell, did you want?
I do. I have. I'm wondering, are there any requirements as far as documentation in the legal realm of, you know, city government that that I missed, or that we need to know about, or that have you talked with the city about?
So we're waiting to hear back from Mike about it. But from what we're seeing, there is a precedence for other committees or boards to organize their materials in exactly this way. And so we'd like to lean on that as an example of what we're hoping to do.
I love the idea. It would be very helpful.
We're not ignoring the city's, website. Those, the agendas and minutes still go to Faith to post, but this gives us more control over it and makes it a lot, I think, easier to access. Great, that's helpful. So we'll wait and see what Michael says, and then go from there. Parks improvement planning, same two folks up.
Sarah.
So the parks improvement plan or maintenance plan, because we're getting an updated trails and active transportation plan, and we do have, parks is kind of left out of that discussion, but we know we can't include everything in absolutely every plan. We do have guidelines that are, in this plan here, but they're not necessarily up to speed on our community needs. So there's two schools of thought here in that a plan like this is tackling each individual park, which involves a public process, a planning process, kind of would fill the role of what a consultant would do. Then we've thought about, and kind of what we also discussed was doing an overall planning kind of policy or guidelines. So this comes from some of the infrastructure that's been implemented in Miles Park. And just so how is that decision made? How do they pick the infrastructure? Some of the neighbors haven't been very excited about some of those decisions, or they're left out of the decision-making process, that nobody approaches any of the neighbors maybe in surrounding parks. And so how can we do this better? So we thought maybe providing an overall guideline on what kind of features we'd like to see, what kind of spending, are they natural, are they trails, and just some of the ideas that the committee might have, and being able to formulate those decision-making processes for public works a little bit better. We don't want to micromanage, all those decisions and getting involved, but how could we provide a structure that would be appealing both to the public as well as public works and the committee? So it'd be interesting to get your thoughts on both of those. Jean presented 3 parks that were relevant. I don't know if I should talk about those 3 parks, but we do have Mayor's Landing and the roping arena is kind of a pressing issue and agenda for developing a parks planning process and involving the committee. So what are we going to do with the roping arena? How do we get public input? What's the overall vision, looking at the past master plan and kind of going forward with that with an idea. So that's also not taken out of our hands and decided for us. And then there was another park, but I think, that's more Sacagawea, and we're looking at bigger picture and some of the maintenance with Pompey's playground and stuff. But I kind of would like input from the committee and public and Dorrell on what you think is a best way forward for the committee. The parks planning process for each individual park will be quite a big project. So maybe we could start with an overall guidelines document or kind of a policy, or I don't know, maybe Matthew, you can comment on what something like that might look like. Pause, yield.
Did we lose him?
No.
I can talk about what we've told all the other boards that are writing documents if you'd like.
Sure.
Which is basically, please don't until you've gotten direction from the commission on how to proceed. Really what we're recommending now, and this is sort of what we've told the conservation board on night sky ordinances, is that you make an ask of the commission to request that staff work with you on creating documents. And I think that's probably the best way forward. We've had a lot of documents that volunteer boards have spent years, months, years, hours and hours on, and the city can't really use them for various reasons, or the city can't adopt them. So it's much better if you start by working with staff from the beginning and then moving forward with documents, but that staff time and the staff working on that has to be directed from the commission level down.
That's exactly what we need to know.
Mm-hmm. So Matthew, I do have a question. Michael Cardos has suggested that we should be figuring out what needs to happen with Mayor's Landing, because the roping arena has changed use. It's no longer being used for a roping arena. It's being leased for the parking lot for 3 days a year. But there's a question about how else people want to use it, and how do they want to use that forested land right behind where the cattle used to be. What's our best way of proceeding on that if we don't have a process laid out for how to do that?
Since I'm not privy to your conversation with the city manager, I don't want to contradict him. I would just say that there are differences between making recommendations for specific spaces and specific parks and creating technical documents. Those are two very different things. From what I'm gathering from your question, it sounds like you all have been directed to make recommendations for future use of the roping arena. And I think that's basically what the process there would be, to make those recommendations to the city commission and allow the city commission to decide on those. That's different than writing a parks plan or creating some sort of guidelines or maintenance scheduling or something like that.
Okay. Because we do have to involve the public. So part of it is, if there's even a bulleted like this way to do it, that'd be great, but we can make up our own.
And all your meetings are public, so the point of you making recommendations is to make sure it goes through that public process, and that's continued with the city commission. Really, the role of these boards is to involve the public in recommending decisions to the city. That's why we have you all as sort of our liaisons and our members of the public to guide us on decisions that we make, so we're not making them in our little city government bubble.
Okay. Tom?
Yes.
Did you want to say something?
No, I don't know.
Oh, okay. You blocked lit up.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
So Sarah, where does that leave you? What do you want to do? I mean, this came up, I think you mentioned Miles Park, but I think you were referring to Mike Webb Park.
For the, infrastructure, on this one,
Yeah, so how do you want to proceed?
So I guess it's asking the city, and maybe just speaking with, do I have to go to the commission, or do we just ask city staff? I mean, how we kind of, what is their idea, and get a directive from them on, perhaps we need to put together what the problem is and why we want to motivate for this. Just a one pager, and what our suggestions are, but let's start a discussion.
So are you going to take that next step?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, and bring it to us at the next meeting?
Correct.
Okay. Other comments from the committee, or Matthew or Darrell?
Yeah, I like the idea. I think then just push for, we'll have a meeting similar to what Jean Marie and I did this week. I think just starting that conversation, and if Sarah, if you're leading it, but meeting with Shannon, Michael, or starting with Shannon. Matthew is often involved now, just sort of starting that process and then getting all of the ducks in a row before we get there and go from there.
Yeah, thanks for that guidance and that reminder, Matthew. It helps us not spin our wheels.
So Sarah, if you want to, and Rachel, if you want to come up with something and have another Zoom call, for example, with Darrell and Michael and Shannon and maybe Matthew, we can do that before the next meeting. It's up to you.
Okay. Thanks.
The report to the commission, there's nothing there. I just included it so it's part of the record. That went to the city commission. It was in their packet last meeting, which is here's what we did and here's what we're working on. So, but we still as a committee need to look at what our priorities are for the year. I think the Trails and Active Transportation Plan are going to be a big part of that, is going to be a big part of that. So,
right.
Yeah. Good. Social media, Allison, did you have anything on that? You're on mute.
Okay, sorry. I keep thinking about it, and there hasn't been anything going on with social media, to be honest. I think that our committee is a perfect example where half the committee is not on social media. So I don't, like Rachel was talking about, I don't think it's the best way for us to outreach. I mean, when we do interactive things, we get like 2 people who might interact with it. So I'm just, I know that we have the calendar, and I was looking at the calendar yesterday, and we do have some ideas to like educate the community on the history of our different projects. But I feel like we need to maybe use newspaper or communicate with Live Well 49 instead, unless someone's really feeling inspired to take it over, because I am not feeling like it's the best avenue. That's my update.
Is it possible to just send Parks and Recreation information about Parks and Trails, since they've got paid staff? And it's a heavy load to manage. If we have calendar updates or anything, inspirational photos or stuff, I don't know how to ask Maggie that, but they might appreciate us sending them content.
I'll ask her.
Thanks.
That's a great idea, Sarah. Thank you.
And one thing we could have her do, for example, is just welcome the latest Adopt a Trail group. You know?
Yeah. And also we can advertise our committee opening as well.
Yep.
Yeah. And they have like 10,000 people who monitor their site. So that would make way more sense than our 350 or whatever it is.
Okay, I'll contact Maggie and send a photo and something about Fairfield Marriott being our latest team and advertise our opening. And then I'll report back to you if that isn't going to work for some reason.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. The woodlot by the high school, Rachel.
There was a conversation with quite a few folks, community-based, city-based, county-based, school-based, discussing the issue of the woodlot. It's just become an unwieldy sort of sore spot. And, you know, I think there's some danger issues, liability issues for the school district. And Parks and Trails may be asked at some point to support some moving forward remedial project there. Really, if any project happens, it's going to be designed by the educators at Park High, and I think that we should just all be on the ready for that. I think that there was a calendar invite for a site visit with all of the folks, and I will share that with the committee for any interested folks to attend.
Any questions?
Jeannie, may I comment on that?
Sure.
I know that in the past, there's been staff that use that area for lessons in science and whatnot. So I'm assuming that somebody has checked with the high school to see if there is any problems and what those might be.
Okay. Yeah, they're all involved. Mm-hmm.
Okay, good.
Yeah, Randy Mogan.
Yeah, there you go.
Is definitely, I would say, the lead science teacher taking the charge with that. Mm-hmm.
Good, good. Because I know there's morel mushrooms in there at the at a certain time if conditions are right.
So Rachel, you'll just keep us in the loop on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually think it could be a potential project that we could work with TPL on, but you know, to be determined for sure.
Sure.
Okay. Right. Thanks. And the volunteers. Did you want to add anything about the NCCC volunteers? I know Shannon.
Yeah, I can give a quick update on that. We just, actually, that's why Sarah and I are here together. We just submitted the application for requesting about 8 volunteers. Farm to School of Park County and Park County Environmental Council are taking the lead, sponsoring that request. And Shannon with Public Works did approve, and so they are written into the application as a project partner, specifically projects, Parks and Trails projects and tree board projects were included in that. So we'll keep you posted as soon as we hear back from them.
I think Shannon mentioned that at our meeting Monday, Darrell, and he seemed really excited about it. To have those.
It's an awesome opportunity. And I think that the way that we set it up, involving so many community organizations and entities is not only smart, but efficient. And we're bringing something like 1,500 community hours, community volunteer hours into town and into the surroundings. So we could certainly get a lot done with this amount of manpower.
Good job. Great. Okay, so now we have to do election of officers. It's always at our January meeting. We've got chair, vice chair, and secretary. Let's see. Rachel, were you interested in continuing as vice chair?
If someone, I won't deny it.
Okay, good.
But I had a motion, or how do we do this, Jeannie?
Well, I know that Allison is stepping down from secretary. And I know she talked to Connor, right?
Well, my first person to step into secretary role was to call Allison. I didn't, so already dropped the ball on my first thing. But yes, we have spoken.
You did actually. I'm taking it right now.
Yeah, we are talking. And we have agreed.
We'll expect better. Yes. Oh my gosh.
And that was so we didn't come in with nobody interested in running for anything. So you just can nominate anybody you want, Rachel. For all three if you want.
Ooh.
Or Sarah, anybody?
I'll nominate Connor for secretary, Jean to remain as chair, and Rachel to remain as vice chair. Do I have to motion?
I second that.
Okay.
Any discussion? Anybody else want to take one of these positions? Hearing no. Any comment? If not, we can take a vote. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. I do want to remind you, we have an empty seat now, a position open. We should try to recruit for that position. And Darrell, you're still on, right? I mean, you asked to stay on as the commissioner rep?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So we need to recruit for Shelley's open seat. And I would encourage you all to think of people that you think want to serve on this committee. We don't just meet out, as you know, on the 1 day per month that our meeting is. We have a lot of work we do in between, so that it does take someone who has a little bit of time.
Jean Marie, have you requested the city put it on the site yet, or have we?
I gave Shelley till yesterday to let me know for sure if she was stepping down, and she is. So I have not until I told the committee. But I will tomorrow.
Yeah, I think we should get it put on the website as soon as possible, and then everyone talk to everyone they know that might be interested. I think it's a great idea to recruit.
And this committee usually makes the recommendation to the commission. Once those applications come in, it means reviewing those applications, interviewing them is what we as a policy have done, is sit down with applicants. Does anybody want to be on the selection committee? Sarah, could we get Connor? Was that you, Rachel, too? No? All right, Sarah and Connor, you are the selection committee. So as we get these in, if we'll just get them to you and you can set up the interviews with them. We do have some questions we've asked of people in the past. I can send those to you if it helps, and you can use those or whatever. So.
Thank you.
Any other committee comments? Or I guess public comments first.
Well, I'll just speak up and just want to say thank you for giving me the opportunity to sit in on your meeting, and you guys are doing an awesome job, and you got a lot of great projects going. So keep up the good work.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
And welcome. Any other public comments? I guess that's you, Robin.
You're on mute, Robin.
Robin, you're on mute, so.
Thanks. Now I'm back. Am I back?
Yep.
You're back.
Yeah. I'm thankful to be a part of the process, and excited to meet the Vitruvian crew and just kind of have as much input as possible for the bike club and for cyclists around town, and whether it be for safety or also kind of recreation and fun purposes on our trails, whatever winds up coming to fruition with new trails. I just hope that it serves the largest group of individuals.
Great, thank you. And then any other public or committee comments?
What's the timeline for new member? Do we want them by next meeting? Is it like?
I think the bylaws have a time frame for doing that. I don't think they can be done by.
See, that does seem fast, but.
And it will have to go to the commission, city commission. They make the selection, we make the recommendation. I'll look up the timing on that. I can't remember exactly how it's worded.
Yeah, we want to get a recommendation that we approve.
Cool.
And sooner, I mean, as soon as you get it on the agenda, it's put into consent items, and unless it's argued, it could be pretty quick, you know, but I don't know what's the timeline of applicants having to have it open. I'm not sure. Or do you know, Jean?
I can't remember if it's 2 weeks or.
Yeah.
I'll look it up. It's in the bylaws or something. Okay. And just as a reminder, let's see, the terms are, Rachel, your term expires the end of this year. And then next year is Carol, Sarah, and Allison. And the year after is Connor and myself and this new person. Will be 24. 24.
When there would be, yeah. Would they slot into what Shelley's role was, or would?
Well, it's the way it works is whatever year they're appointed, they finished out that year plus 3 more.
Okay.
Whether they're appointed in January or November, they finished that year plus 3 more. And it ends on December 31st.
Okay.
So.
Jean, if you don't mind, I just quickly pulled up the bylaws, and you do have to advertise 1 month prior to filling that position.
Great, thank you for doing that. And you could find our bylaws.
I've used the city website a few times now.
Yeah. Great, okay, so there you've got it, Connor and Sarah. It's got to be advertised. I'll get it. I'll copy you on what I said, Faith, and all that. Any other comments? If not, we'll take a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
I second.
All those in favor? Aye. Great. Thanks, everybody, and thanks, guests.
Thank you.
All right. See ya.
Thank you. Good night.
Happy